What's up YouTube, it's the one and only legend of winning, aka Low, and I am back with another video. Now, with the first round exits starting to occur pretty rapidly, it is starting to be extremely questionable on what offseason moves are going to happen, especially because there's a lot of players that could be moved in this upcoming offseason. First, you got Paul George in Indiana and what's going on over there. Then you have Gordon Hayward, who could potentially be moved as well because he is a free agent. However, the biggest eyesore of them all is the Los Angeles Clippers with the amount of pieces that potentially could be moved. JJ Redick, Chris Paul, and Blake Griffin are all free agents in this upcoming offseason. So because of that, a lot of people are really speculating a lot of changes are going to happen in this next coming season, especially if they get knocked out of the first round by the Utah Jazz. Now, to their credit, the Los Angeles Clippers, they have had a lot of unlucky seasons roll their way with the whole Donald Sterling thing that happened several years ago, but ever since then it seems like injuries has consistently plagued their year, and this season is no different. Blake Griffin went down yet again with an injury keeping him sidelined during the playoffs. So now what is next for this team? Because if this team does get knocked out in the first round, I do believe a lot of people have fairly interesting concerns about this organization moving forward, especially Chris Paul. Chris Paul is at a stage of his career where he doesn't really have time to play around with maybes and what could have beens and possibilities that never really panned out. Chris Paul is an elite point guard in my eyes and through a lot of people's eyes as well. Despite his inabilities to score at an outrageous rate such as Russell Westbrook, James Harden, or Stephen Curry, he's still extremely effective, efficient, both on offense and defense. And because of this, he is sought out to be, again, an elite point guard. However, wasting his years in Los Angeles with the Clippers really doesn't seem like it's really gonna work out too much longer, especially because it doesn't really seem like he really wanted to be on that organization. They're just a bystander that benefited from being in the same city that the Los Angeles Lakers play in. So because of this, I do believe Chris Paul will inevitably leave, even though it does cost him around $70 million to do so. I would love to see Chris Paul on a title contender such as the San Antonio Spurs or maybe even the Toronto Raptors. However, that still leaves two more players with the Clippers in JJ Redick and Blake Griffin. Now, JJ Redick has surprisingly been extremely vocal about his disdain for the organization, especially in the lack of direction that it shows every single year. So because of this, it's extremely understandable to why JJ Redick is widely concerned of the direction of the organization. And quite honestly, if he's not part of that direction, I don't really think he cares too much. JJ Redick, similar to Chris Paul, is at a stage in his career where he can't really be concerned about possibilities. He probably wants things that are more guaranteed. And in a league where players are becoming much more bigger, stronger, athletic, even though yes, his dominance behind the three-point line is felt in any offense, he does lack in a lot of other perspective of basketball. So because of this, it really wouldn't make any sense for him to return back to the team so a 6'2", 6'3" shooting guard could play in a backcourt with a 6'1" point guard. So more than likely, JJ Redick will not be returning. However, the thing that is really starting to blow people away is the commitment that the Clippers have already made to Blake Griffin. And quite honestly, I don't understand why this is blowing people away, because the Los Angeles Clippers really have no other choice but to sign Blake Griffin. And quite honestly, that might be the best decision that they could potentially make this upcoming offseason. But the reason why I say this is because the Clippers have a massive problem on their hands that is much bigger than winning a championship, and that is this is an organization that has been in the NBA for over 40 years if you want to include the Buffalo Braves, but even if you don't, they still have been in the NBA under the Clippers name for nearly 40 years. And the fact of the matter is that they've been in the NBA for that long and still have not been able to build any culture whatsoever. This is an organization that does not have any face of the franchise. They don't have any jersey that they've been able to retire. They don't have any part in their entire history where they can point to and say this is the best era in Clippers history. Because of that, they have to keep Blake Griffin because he has now become the face of the organization, which is a great thing. And to be completely honest with you, it's extremely valuable. Now, some people are making a stance that they should go out there and try to win a championship and push Blake Griffin aside because his time with the organization is finally up. The consistent lack of development, all these injuries, and quite honestly, Blake Griffin just doesn't fit in the NBA right now. However, let's just be honest, even if they get Paul George or whoever you think they're going to be able to pull off and keep Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan, what are the odds of them still winning a championship? It's so slim that doesn't really make any sense. It would just make more sense for them to keep Blake Griffin, build a culture, and continue to have 45 to 50 win seasons. Now I know what you're thinking, winning should always mean more than anything else. However, you are wrong. Building a culture, especially for a team like the Clippers, is much more important than going out there attempting to win a championship. And the reason for that is because they need identity. For example, let's look at the Memphis Grizzlies. A lot of people criticize the Grizzlies for giving Mike Conley that max contract because they don't view him as being one of the top 10 to 20 players in the league. However, even though Mike Conley isn't playing at that elite of a level, he's still a max contract player for the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies is a relatively new franchise. They need an identity, they need faces to the franchise, they need to build culture. They need players that they can embellish on how great they are when they have nostalgia. They need players that hang their jersey up in the Raptors. They need players to build the culture in the era of basketball even when they're not contending, so they can become much more easier to identify with. Another example, the Toronto Raptors. People will immediately identify Vince Carter with the Toronto Raptors. The reason for this is because Vince Carter gave an identity to the Raptors so they can separate themselves from everybody else in the league. Vince Carter wasn't a top 10 player of his time. Vince Carter never led that team to the conference finals, let alone the NBA finals, let alone win a championship. And quite honestly, this Toronto Raptors team right now that we're watching has actually accomplished more than Vince Carter has throughout his time. However, Vince Carter is the player that gave that team an identity. Another example, the Atlanta Hawks. Over the past couple of years, the Atlanta Hawks have seen a lot of success, especially the year they won 60 games. However, 20 years from now, are people going to remember Paul Millsap? Are they going to raise his jersey in the Raptors? Are they going to make a statue of him? Odds are no, but they've done all of those things for Dominique Wilkins. If you go to a Miami Heat fan to this day, right now, which is completely crazy to me, they still applaud Haslam every single time he gets on and off the court. The Miami Heat identify Haslam as being part of the culture, and because of that, they've been able to consistently build off of that, and that is what the Clippers need. So the reality is, the Clippers are not going to win a championship, regardless if they add Paul George to the team or not, because even then they would still have to persuade Chris Paul to stay as well, which will be extremely difficult to do. But even with Chris Paul, Paul George, and DeAndre Jordan, looking at Doc Rivers and the track record that he's had, he's not going to be able to build around that either. So it doesn't really matter what they bring to the team. More than likely, they're not going to win. So because of that, you have to build something else. You have to find value in another player, and you have to give yourself an identity. And the only way that the Clippers, a team that, again, I'm saying this for the fourth time, I believe, who has been in the NBA for nearly 40 years, they have to build a culture, an identity. They have to have an era. They have to have a player whose jersey gets hung up 10 years from now. They have to have a player that they become nostalgia about, that they can embellish on how great they are. And that player, unfortunately, is Blake Griffin. But hey, if you disagree with me, make sure you put in the comment section below. Leave a thumbs up. I actually want to thank you all for liking all the videos that I upload. I start to realize, compare my videos to a lot of other people in the community, I get a good handful of likes on my videos despite the view gap in some other videos. So shout out to you all for always consistently showing me support. Hit the subscribe button if you enjoy the content, because I will be uploading something else similar to this about Russell Westbrook and the Thunder. And with all that being said, people, I'll see you all later. Peace.